To full stop or not to full stop? That is the question. We're going to be getting very rhetorical and indeed theatrical today as we talk about punctuation, and you'll learn why as this lesson goes on. It's wonderful to see so many people in the live chat. It's been fantastic to see so many people downloading the worksheet in advance for this week's lesson. It's linked in the video description. Obviously a very popular topic, so without any further ado, let's get started. So this is the worksheet for this week. You can see we've got a passage here that we need to punctuate. And as I mentioned, it's linked down below in the video description on YouTube. I'm not going to begin with a big introductory spiel. I'm going to explain what's going on as we go through and as the relevant ideas come up. So the beginning says, correct the passage by adding appropriate punctuation, and it gives you a list of the things that you might use here. It isn't saying you'll use all of them. Full stops, commas, question marks, exclamation marks, colons, semicolons, and apostrophes. Aim to punctuate in a way that communicates the text's meaning clearly and accurately. You will need to rewrite some lowercase letters as capitals, obviously, because if you add a full stop, then you're going to be adding a capital. Lots of people are asking for shout outs. I want to get focused on the lesson and get into this right now. Maybe later on I'll say hi to a few people. Yes, indeed, Azacado, I was invoking Shakespeare in a rather awkward fashion at the beginning there. Well done. So, see if you can see what I'm doing as we get started and have a think about why I began with that ham Shakespeare. Good punctuation is easier than it might seem. Indeed, it's something that anybody can master. Okay, listen to how I said that. Now listen to how I say this. Good punctuation is easier than it might seem. Indeed, it's something that anybody can master. That's two different ways of reading this aloud. But which one is more useful for us as we try to understand how to punctuate it, where to put punctuation marks and which ones to put? Well, clearly it's the first one. The second one's a kind of in a mumble and it isn't clearly punctuated. But as soon as I start trying to read this aloud to an audience, if I don't punctuate it correctly in the way that I talk, it sounds weird. Here is me punctuating it differently. Good punctuation is easier than it might seem. Indeed. It's something that anybody can master. That's just bizarre, okay? It makes no sense. So as soon as I start performing, I have to know how to punctuate or it'll sound odd. And there's a basic truth here, which is that all of you know good punctuation. You must already know good punctuation, or you would be talking in a very peculiar kind of English. You know where these marks go because you can talk this language. And therefore, all you need to learn is how to turn the things that you say into what's on the page. And that's what this lesson is all about. Good punctuation is easier than it might seem. Indeed, it's something that anybody can master. There is clearly a punctuation mark after seem here, okay? Clearly a punctuation mark there. What is it? Well, there's a really simple method for choosing between the two most common punctuation marks, the full stop and the comma. If you learn one thing from the lesson, learn this. It will revolutionize your life, unless you already always get these right. We take a pause at that point. How long can we pause for without it becoming silly? If you can take a big long pause and then start the next thing and it doesn't lose all meaning, then you can put a full stop there. And if you can put a full stop there, you almost certainly should. If you need to pause but it only works as a short pause and a long pause sounds ridiculous, then it's probably a comma. And that rule will save you from most of the punctuation mistakes that people make. So let's try it. Okay, let's try a long pause. Good punctuation is easier than it might seem. Indeed, it's something that anybody can master. If you want that to seem less awkward, I'll take a sip of my tea. Good punctuation is easier than it might seem. Indeed, it's something that anybody can master. That makes perfect sense. There's nothing odd about that, apart from the fact that I'm talking in a funny voice. So if I can take a long pause and there's nothing odd about it, you can put a full stop there. Problem solved, okay? Good punctuation is easier than it might seem. There are no other pauses there. There's nothing weird. We can go on. I've got a full stop, so this must be a capital letter for a new sentence. Don't forget that. Indeed, it's something that anybody can master. Listen. There's a little pause after indeed. Can that be a full stop? Let's do the same test. Indeed. It's something that anybody can master. No, that sounds weird. You wouldn't take a massive pause there. You'd take a little one. Indeed, it's something that anybody can master. It's a comma, okay? That can only be a short pause. This is a comma space. Why is there a comma there? Let's think about the rules a little bit. Well, rules schmools, but let's just think about what's going on here. The main statement here is, it's something that anybody can master. And I fronted that with this little extra to add emphasis to it. Indeed, it's something that anybody can master, but that's added material. And so to show that it's added, that it isn't part of the main thing I'm saying, I plonk a comma after it. Okay, indeed, it's something that anybody can master. We come to the end of the sentence here, the end of the paragraph. There must be a full stop. Don't forget that. Anything else here? Now, when you're writing or correcting your writing, editing your writing, you should have a hit list of your most likely mistakes. And one thing that should almost certainly be on your hit list is the word it's. Okay? Because it's might be written as it's, or it might be written as it's. These two things have completely different meanings. It means of it. It's a possessive or genitive. So we're talking about the cat licked its shoulder. It means of the cat, the shoulder of itself. The cat licked its shoulder. It owns the shoulder, one would hope, because it's part of it, of it. It's with an apostrophe means that a letter is missing. What's the letter? It's an I, because this is short for it is. Okay? Now, I'm not going to waste your time talking about the rules and the reasons. These are two words. There is only one thing that you need to do if you're not completely secure on this, and that is learn them. And it's very quick and easy to learn, and if you don't learn it, you are without excuse. You're just lazy. Don't be lazy. Learn it's and it's, and always get this right. And whenever you're editing your work, look out for the word it's and check it. Could this be short for it is? Indeed, it is something that anybody... Yes, it is. It is, so it needs an apostrophe. By the way, while we're here, other things you'd look out for. You definitely want to look out for to, or to, or to, because those words sound identical but have different spellings and different meanings. So you'd want to look out for those. You want to look out for any word that ends in S, because is it a plural, a more than one thing, or is it possessive? The shop's sign, the sign of the shop, would need an apostrophe. Or is it plural and possessive? The shop's signs, the signs of the several shops, so that needs an apostrophe after the S, for example. So any word ending in S is something you should stop and check when you're writing and when you're reviewing. So have a sort of hit list, as I said, of likely mistakes that you look out for. These are some of the things that might be on it. There'll be lots more. There'll be your common spelling mistakes. You know you make those mistakes, so you look out for them. It's a really important part of editing, whether it's for punctuation or other grammatical things. Namada says, that was too much twos for me. Too much twos, too many twos. There's a deep irony in your comment, which is that you have actually misspelt two while writing that. Maybe that was deliberate, I'm not sure. Maha, on the other hand, writes, 2 boys walk to the park with too much joy, and all the twos there are beautiful and correct, so many congratulations. We've got to push on and we'll never finish this. That paragraph is, I think, complete. If I miss anything, do let me know. It'd be terrible if I made a mistake in my own exercise. It's possible to... Whoa, it's. Okay, red flag. It's one of our hit list words. Is this short for it is? It is possible. Yes, it is. So we put an apostrophe. You see, it's as easy as that. You notice that a word is on your hit list, so you check it. You say, could it be it is? It could be, so you put an apostrophe. It's easy as that to avoid one of the most common mistakes in English, once you have a simple method for doing so. Right, again, we're going to perform this a bit. It's possible to learn accurate punctuation by absorbing various rules, and it will probably help if at some point you study these formally. However, if you study these formally. However, practical punctuation is about clearly communicating. Okay, so there's a big whopping great stop before however. Could it be a long one? If at some point you study these formally. However, practical punctuation, yeah, you can have a massive stop there and it still makes sense, so it's a full stop. You see how easy this rule is to apply once you're familiar with it. So we're listening for a pause, and then we're testing whether we can hang around on that pause and have a sip of tea. And if we can, then it can be a full stop. And if it can be, it almost certainly should be. Very few exceptions. Maybe it's a question mark. If it was a question, you have to check for that. You get used to looking for questions. Come to that later on. But if it can be a full stop, then 9 times out of 10, or maybe even more, it will be. Let's go back through this sentence, because it was quite hard to say. It's possible to learn accurate punctuation by absorbing various rules, and it will probably help if at some point you study these formally. There's a very clear pause before the and. Okay, I've taken a work pen, there you are. It's possible to learn by observing various rules, and it will probably help if at some point you study these formally. And here I wade into a controversy in English. So my own preference, I like to punctuate as I would speak. For me, that is the purpose of punctuation. It's to convey my tone as clearly as I can, to help the reader to understand, but also to hear the words as I would say them. For me, writing is just a codified version of speech sounds. Essentially. So that being my approach to it, I would tend to put a comma here because there is a natural pause when you read it. There's also a natural separation of clauses. It makes sense. Some people would say that the word and, used like this, clearly communicates that there should be a pause. You would pause before it. You don't need a comma to tell you that, so the comma is just clutter. And so other people would say, don't put the comma, it's unnecessary. And as I make that argument, I think, yeah, that's quite a good argument as well. So really, you've got an absolutely free choice whether you put a comma there or not, and it comes down to your stylistic preference. It isn't a matter of right or wrong, whatever some grammar fanatic might tell you. You could put one there or you might not. I probably would, but then maybe I wouldn't. I'm not always consistent. It's possible to learn it by absorbing various rules, and it will probably help if at some point you study these formally. Good, I don't think there's anything else there. We need a capital H on however. You'll notice that however here is starting a sentence. You'll notice that however here means, pay attention to this by the way, because later on you'll understand why it's important. However, when it means, on the other hand, will invariably start a sentence. It might start an independent clause after a semicolon or something, but let's not worry about that. It will start a sentence. I mean, that's working as the start of a sentence anyway, So, however, meaning on the other hand, starts a sentence and is followed by a comma. You don't need to know the followed by a comma because listen to the thing. However, practical punctuation is about clearly communicating. There's a whopping great pause after it. There has to be, or it sounds weird. If you say, however, practical punctuation, what? No, there's a pause. There has to be. Okay. However, meaning on the other hand, starts a sentence is followed by a comma because of course it's followed by a comma. You can tell. However, practical punctuation is about clearly communicating the structure and rhythm of a sentence. For this reason, it should always. What? No. It's about clearly communicating the structure and rhythm of a sentence. You could stop there, okay? So it's likely that there's a full stop. To be certain that it's a full stop, you also need to test the beginning of the next sentence to see whether it works as the start of a sentence. For this reason, it should always reflect your writing's natural flow. Absolutely, that works perfectly as the start of a sentence. So that's a correct full stop. So to assess a full stop, I told you about waiting to see whether you could have a long pause. That's a really good way to assess it. Another way to look at it is to say, can that end the sentence before? And then after it, can I start the sentence after? Those two things need to be true for it to be a correct full stop. But I think the big pause test is the best test of all. It's clearly about however, practical punctuation is clearly about communicating the structure and rhythm of a sentence. Stop for a sip of tea, blah, blah, blah. For this reason, it should always reflect your writing's natural flow. You could pause there, it makes sense, it's a full stop. You're getting the hang of this, well done. Hope you are. Okay. For this reason, it should always reflect your writing's natural flow. Well, this needs a full stop at the end. That is clear. Let's go back to the previous sentence. However, practical punctuation is about clearly communicating the structure and rhythm of a sentence. There's an and there. Should we put a comma before it? Is about clearly communicating the structure and rhythm of a sentence. No, that's a weird pause. You wouldn't stop there. Okay? Structure and rhythm is one idea here. What is it about communicating? It's about communicating the structure and rhythm of a sentence. It's one thing. It does not want to be broken up by a comma. So the concept and the sound should indicate there is no comma there. So you'll get people arguing about whether you should put commas before the word and or not, as we discussed here. Do not get hung up on that and start thinking about rules, because it'll confuse you. I mean, you miss commas where you need them and add them where they create havoc, as they would if you put one down here after structure, okay? Just think about the sound of what you're saying and what makes sense, and use punctuation in a way that follows that naturally, okay? For this reason, it should always reflect your writing's natural flow. Remember this sentence up here. Indeed, it's something that anybody can master. Remember how he said that indeed was kind of tagged on the beginning? Same thing's happening here. It should always reflect your writing's natural flow. For this reason, it should always reflect your writing's natural flow. We've added a little connector on the beginning of the sentence which links the ideas. For this reason, and then you pause naturally after that connecting phrase. For this reason, it should always reflect, oh, you've got a comma there. Okay? I'm trying to strike a balance between moving fairly quickly so it doesn't get boring, but taking enough time to explain things properly. I hope I'm striking that balance. If you feel I'm striking that balance well, you know what's coming here, striking that balance well, and that you are learning useful things about punctuation, then yes, please subscribe to my channel, and that will mean that you find out about my other lessons when they come up. When I post videos, you'll get a notification in your YouTube. It'd be wonderful if you subscribe to this channel using the red button and click the bell button. I'll appreciate that very much. Whoa, big bang there as I elbow the table. Thank you. I really appreciate it. What's going on in the comments? Please could the people being annoying in the comments stop that, but please could also the people trying to be comments policemen stop that. All the people saying, stop and listen, stop spanning. If you spent less time telling other people to stop being annoying and just watch the lesson, you'd probably be less annoyed. Life is like that. Yeah, don't annoy people, but also just don't be so easily annoyed by people. Goodness me. People are people. Let them be people. Sometimes they're annoying. It happens. Sometimes people smell. We just hold our noses. That's the way it goes. For this reason, it should always reflect your writing's natural flow. What have I missed? What did I say up here? On my hit list was words ending in S, and there is one here. Your writing's natural flow. So could this be an of something thing? Could this be about possession, which doesn't necessarily mean having a sweetie, it's also a kind of an abstract idea. So could we say there's something of something? It should always reflect the natural flow of your writing. It should always reflect your writing's natural flow. Yes, it's possessive, okay? Next question, does the apostrophe go here or here? Well, are we talking about one writing or several writings? For this reason, it should always reflect your writing's natural flow. Writings will be lots of things you write, but we're talking about the act of writing stuff, which is writing. I am writing. My writing style. It should always reflect your writing's natural flow. The apostrophe goes there. Simple. Okay? Look out for words ending in S. When I say words ending in S, I'm not talking about this, obviously. Use your common sense. Right. If you've got any common sense. Probably not. It's probably a wasted effort. Only joking. To begin with, you need to get used to begin with, it's a fronted phrase that introduces my main point here. You'll have spotted it already. It takes a comma. To begin with, you need to get used to performing your sentences dramatically as though for a live audience and listening to the natural pauses. Once you are, that could be a big pause. Let's try it. And listening to the natural pauses. Once you're used to this, you can pause for hours there. Sit on it. Have a tea break. So we can put a full stop. And then a capital. But that doesn't mean we've dealt with the sentence before because we haven't checked it properly. Let's go through it again. To begin with, you need to get used to performing your sentences dramatically as though for a live audience and listening to the natural pauses. Well, you can hear where I was taking a little break there. Sentences dramatically. Obviously, I can't stop for ages there and have tea. It's just a little break. As though for a live audience and listening to the natural pauses. You can hear there's another little breath, a little lift before and. To begin with, you need to get used to performing your sentences dramatically, as though for a live audience, and listening to the natural pauses. So it's quite easy to punctuate this. But again, I'm just going to talk again about the comma before the and, because you might be thinking, is this an optional one or not? This is not an optional comma. This comma must be there. It must. It must. Why? Simple reason. So we've spoken about to begin with at the beginning, right? To begin with, a little introductory phrase, it's been tagged on the start, it's extra, so we pause after it when we speak to show that. To begin with, here's a little pause to show that was extra, here's my main thing. You need to get used to a comma there, okay? This too is extra. What's the main part of this sentence? Listen to this and compare it to what's on the page or the screen. You need to get used to performing your sentences dramatically and listening to the natural pauses. That's the thing I'm saying here. As though for a live audience is extra information that I've added in. I've slotted that into my sentence, which you're pointing up here, that's where the text is. I've slotted that into my sentence to make it clearer what I'm saying, but it's extra. And I could take it out and the sentence would still make sense. And that means that I need to put commas around it. Some people saying that they couldn't find the sheet for today, a sheet didn't come up. I think that's probably something to do with your software, something to do with your web browser or your phone, but I will check the link after the lesson and sort it out so that anyone, if you want to come back, you can definitely get it if there is a problem there. Some wonderful person in the comments are flying past. Yes, Pradipika says, as though for a live audience is a subordinate clause. It is, absolutely. As you'll have gathered, I'm avoiding grammatical terms as I talk about this, because I want to show people that you don't need to learn lots of fancy grammatical language in order to punctuate perfectly. You just need to understand how language works and how you would perform it if you were an actor on the stage, and how that will lead you into being able to punctuate brilliantly. So I'm not talking about subordinate clauses and main clauses and all that kind of stuff, but you are absolutely right. And where do I talk about this? I say in the previous paragraph, I wasn't talking about me. I say it will probably help if at some point you study these formally and learn about things like subordinate clauses. However, for the moment, just learn to do it and learn to do it correctly, learn to do it naturally, and the terminology can follow. It can then help you to understand why you're doing the things that you're doing from a different point of view, which is always useful to have more than one angle on things. Carrying on. Once you are used to this, you should be able to hear the performance in your head rather than declaiming to the room. Declaiming means doing that, performing it. Speaking it like an actor, that's a good definition of declaiming. Someone talks in a very declamatory way. They talk like this. Maybe you have some teachers who talk in this sort of manner. Very declamatory. It's a good word. Once you are used to this, you should be able to hear. Okay, once you're used to this, it's another of these sort of introductory phrases. Once you're used to this, you should be. Is it introductory? I don't know. But anyway, we've got two ideas, two clauses here. We're separating with a comma because we pause. Just simple as that. You'd pause, wouldn't you? Once you are used to this, you should be able to hear the performance in your head. But you would not sit on that pause and have a drink of tea. Once you are used to this, you should be able to. Does not work. So it's a comma, okay? It's just as easy as this. Easy as this. Once you are used to this, you should be able to hear the performance in your head rather than declaiming to the room. That does need a comma here. It's a little bit harder to spot because I can see that you might read it without much of a pause. Once you're used to this, you should be able to hear the performance in your head rather than declaiming to the room. It does still kind of work. So this one I accept is a bit tricky, but it does need a comma. There really is a separation of clauses there. And you can say it with a pause and it sounds better. You should be able to hear the performance in your head rather than declaiming to the room. Okay? That's a tricky comma. I wouldn't blame you if you missed it. It does need to be there. but life will not end if it isn't. And of course we need a full stop at the end because we're at the end of a paragraph. Have I missed anything here? Well, I sincerely hope not. Make sure that when I go back through it at the end, right? Maybe you can tell me in the comments. Someone's found the worksheet. Brilliant. Yeah, if you go down below into the video description, you'll find the link there. You go down, you click the subscribe button, then below that, you might need, if you're on a phone, there's a little down arrow that will display the video description. It's not very obvious. It's a little arrow that points down under the video. You click in it, and suddenly the video description goes broop and opens out in front of you like magic. Very happy magic. Wow. Right. Spotting where to put punctuation is often not too difficult, the harder thing. Ooh, that doesn't sound right. Not too difficult, the harder thing. As you get used to this, you'll start very quickly to spot places where run-ons just sound odd. And you know there's something going on. There's something going on here, isn't there? Spotting where to put punctuation is often not too difficult. Can we pause for a long time? As we're doing. The harder thing is learning which marks to use, which different. Yes, absolutely we can. Full stop. Okay, so we sorted out where this sentence ends and put a capital on the next one. We need to go back into the sentence and check it. Spotting where to put punctuation is often not too difficult. I didn't pause anywhere there. There aren't any suspect hit list words. Well, there are. There's 2 and 2, but we're not looking at spellings today. We can assume the spellings are correct. They are, I hope. This is not a spelling exercise. So you would check those if you're editing your work today. We're not doing. Spotting where to put punctuation is often not too difficult. The only pause is at the end. It's fine. Nothing's possessive. Onwards. The harder thing is learning which marks to use in which situations. This can be frustrating. Really, I really want to stop after situations. I really want to. But can I? The harder thing is learning which marks to use in which situations. This can be frustrating, and you may wonder blah-de-blah-de-blah. Yes, big pause, full stop. It's not a question, it's a full stop. Now, some people might want to put an exclamation mark here. The harder thing is learning which marks to use in which because you'd say it like this. You could say it like this. The harder thing is learning which marks to use in which situations. And if you want to convey that tone of voice, then an exclamation mark is absolutely fine. But what would happen if I overused exclamation marks? So let's go back to the end of the previous paragraph. I'm going to go from once, okay? Listen to me say this and think about how I sound. Once you're used to this, you should be able to hear the performance in your head rather than declaiming to the room. Spotting where to put punctuation marks is often not too difficult. The harder thing is learning which marks to use in which situations. Okay, that's what it sounds like if I put an exclamation mark on the end of all of those sentences. I always end by exclaiming what I'm saying as though it's the most exciting thing ever. And after a while, you as the listener go, no, it isn't. It's not that interesting. Stop shouting at me. Because that's what exclamation marks do. So, just occasionally using an exclamation mark to sound like this is a good thing to do. Because it communicates a certain tone. It adds a bit of interest to your writing. But use them very sparingly. And what I want to show in this lesson is that most of the time you don't need them, and I'm not going to use one here. But you could if you wanted to. But if you use one here, don't use one for ages before or for ages afterwards, okay? Exclamation marks, be wary of them. It's like ... People use it way too much. Don't be that person. The harder thing is learning which marks to use in which situations. This can be frustrating, and you may wonder whether you'll ever crack it, however hard you try, however it will come with practice. Okay, this is a little bit tricky. Lots of things going on here. Let's slow down. This can be frustrating, and you may wonder whether you'll... Okay, you can hear me pausing there. It's a really natural place for a comma. There's a definite pause as I perform this. Again, some people wouldn't put a comma there because of the and, but I really would. It creates the right rhythm in this sentence for me. This can be frustrating, and you may wonder whether you'll ever crack it. Okay, something going on there. Let's try a full stop, and let's see. And you may wonder whether you'll ever crack it. Takes a pause. However hard you try, however it will come with practice. No, not right. Can't be a full stop. What happens if it's a comma? This can be frustrating, and you may wonder whether you'll ever crack it, however hard you try. However, it will come, so I put a nice big pause here with a full stop. That one's a comma, and suddenly it makes sense. But suddenly you say, hang on a sec. I remember what you, Mr. Robert Lomax, said earlier on in this lesson. Mr. Nobody calls me Mr. But anyway. Where you said, when we were back up here, however, begins a sentence and is followed by a comma. And here we've got a however that does not begin a sentence and is not followed by a comma. So you're obviously making it up as you go along. Well, I'm sure I am making it up as I go along. In fact, that's definitely the case. However, this is different because what I said was, however, when it means on the other hand, starts a sentence and is followed by a comma. This, however, means something different. It does not mean on the other hand. It means however much or to whatever extent. This can be frustrating and you may wonder whether you'll ever crack it however hard you try. It's got a different meaning even though it's written the same, however, and it's a different word. This kind of however can be in the middle of a sentence and it doesn't have a comma after it. Okay? It's a different however. So the rule is, I'm going to say it one more time, I think, because it's so important. However, when it means on the other hand, starts a sentence and is followed by a comma. Like this, however, that we have got, whoops, not on the floor, where I've just dropped my magic tablet marker. However, it will come with practice. That however there fulfills those rules. So it does start a sentence and have a comma. And of course at the end we got a full stop. Now you may be wondering, has anyone pointed out yet in the comments? You haven't. Why not? Why haven't you spotted my apparent mistake? Because there's something here that I haven't covered yet. Go back to the previous sentence. This can be frustrating and you may wonder whether you'll ever... Who's Yule? Are we talking about Yuletide cheer? No, that was weeks ago. Christmas is gone. Christmas was a month ago. It was a month ago today. How utterly tragic is that? But it does mean that there are only 11 months left till Christmas. No, I can't pull that off. I can't turn such a bad fact into a good one. Sorry. No Christmas for a long time. Anyway, no Yule, no Yule nogs, no Yuletide. It doesn't mean anything like that. It means, and you may wonder whether you will ever crack it. There are a load of missing letters, W and I. You will, becoming Yule, because we're lazy and we talk like that, needs an apostrophe. As you know, you can have apostrophes for possession, such as, where were we? Up here. Your writings. The natural flow of your writing. Okay, the writing owns the natural flow. It's got an apostrophe for possession. Here we got an apostrophe for contraction because Yule has become you will has become Yule. So we've chopped out some letters, we contract it, means made it shorter, and so it takes an apostrophe. Many people believe that even the Yule in writings comes from a contraction because something in Old English along the lines of writing as. I'm kind of fudging modern and Old English here, so you wouldn't see the actual word, but that's the kind of way that the possession might have been shown a long time ago. And indeed, you see in Old English, you see lots of possessive words, lots of genitives ending es. And so actually the e's got contracted and replaced with an apostrophe, and oh look, we got writings. So it may well be to at least a certain extent that possessive apostrophes come from contractions, but that's just a little side point in case it's of interest to you. However, it will come with practice, that's what matters. One last thought. Don't fall into the trap of, okay, you can have a decent pause there, so that sounds like it could be a full stop. Could be. Hold that thought. One last thought. Don't, okay, clearly short for do not, don't fall into the trap of overcomplicating your punctuation marks. How many times have I? Of overcomplicating your punctuation marks, how many times have I? Don't fall into the trap of overcomplicating your punctuation marks. How long can I pause for and it still makes sense? How many times have I used a semicolon or colon in this passage? Yeah, you might lose the flow, but it doesn't sound completely bizarre to take a big pause there. So it definitely can be a full stop. Okay, and then that's a capital. Haven't capitalized this yet. We'll come and talk about why in a bit. How many times have I used a semicolon or colon in this passage? Okay, and that's the end. So hang on, it's got how. How many times have I used a semicolon or colon in this passage? It's a question. Look out for questions. Don't miss them. You need a question mark. Okay, essential. Hope you didn't miss that. But we aren't quite done. One last thought. Don't fall into the trap of overcomplicating your punctuation marks. So listen to this, okay? Imagine I said it like a comma. One last thought. Don't fall into the trap of overcomplicating your punctuation marks. That's wrong. Be more dramatic. One last thought. Don't fall into the trap. No, it doesn't sound right because don't fall into the trap. It's clearly a new statement. Okay, it isn't just a continuation of the same. But if I do a long pause, one last thought. Don't fall into the trap of overcomplicating your punctuation marks. But I've said there's going to be one last thought. So why have I then sat around for hours before saying what that thought is? So it's a longer pause than a comma, but it isn't as long a pause as a long full stop. There's something in between here. And the reason it's in between is because, as I just suggested, these ideas are linked. The link is that I say, one last thought. Okay, that's a kind of short way of saying there is going to be one last thought. And then you're thinking, what is it? What's the last thought? I'm terribly excited. And the thought is, don't fall into this trap that I'm going to tell you about. They are connected ideas, and we've got a punctuation mark to show that connection between the point and the expanded point, or the evidence backing it up. And that punctuation mark is the colon, okay? A dot over a dot. This is one of those rare situations where you need a colon, okay? Not that rare, but relatively rare compared to how often people try to squeeze them into their writing. One last thought. Don't fall into the trap of... It sounds like that. One last thought. Don't fall into the trap of overcomplicating your punctuation marks. So there's a definite new start after thought for don't, which doesn't really fit with the idea of a comma, but there's clearly a link which doesn't fit with a full stop. And here a colon is the perfect linking punctuation mark for that job. I said I was going to talk about here whether we were going to have a capital D. This is another of these points where, frankly, I think a lot of personal preference comes in. Remember when we were back at the top and I said that this comma here was really a matter of personal preference. You could use it or not use it as you preferred. And people they get their knickers in a terrible twist arguing about these things that are not worth arguing about. It comes down to personal preference. This is another of these moments. I personally prefer to put a capital D in this situation. The reason for that is that I want to show that here I am beginning something that is a complete sentence in its own right. One last thought. Don't fall into it's clearly a new sentence that I'm introducing. The capital D makes that clear. Many people would say that that is more of an American English convention, and that British English, the English that you in the United Kingdom use, would not tend to put a capital letter after that colon. Okay? So, in order to not annoy your teachers, you can do what I just did there and split an infinitive, because that's a completely made up rule and you should split all infinitives, by the way, but that's a by the by, just do it to annoy stupid people. You don't know what I'm talking about. If you do, well done. Look up split infinitive and then think about why it really is a stupid rule. Anyway, what was I saying before I went off on one? One last thought. Don't fall into the trap of worrying too much about what's British English and what's American when it comes to these subtleties. But your teacher might mind. A marker might mind. Oh, they really shouldn't. Just do what's conventional. Keep it lowercase after a colon unless it's a name. But if I was just writing this, I wasn't writing it for an 11 plus examiner, I would put a capital D. I don't care which you do. I think you've got a free choice here. But my advice on balance for 11 plus is don't put a capital D on don't after the colon. Did that make sense? Hope so. You can always rewind, or you can just go over and just for the hell of it, skip over that bit just because I was being so annoying. Overcomplicating your punctuation marks. How many times have I used a semicolon or colon in this passage? Great, we're there. Now, I'm going to tell you in a second, I'm going to go straight to taking your questions, okay? It's not going to be a tip of the week this time because I've just given loads of tips and that's enough for today. So I'm going to come to your questions shortly. I'll answer one. Narmada says, what was the stupid rule? The stupid rule was the rule that says don't split an infinitive. So if you want to Google split infinitive and find out what I'm talking about, look it up. It's not a rule, it's a made up rule, and people who think it is a rule are, I think, being very silly. So you can Google it another time. When you've watched this lesson, don't leave my lesson, Google it another time. Right, now I'm waiting for your questions to answer in the question and answer session, and while you write some down, I'm just going to read this out one time as a whole, performatively, and just make sure I haven't missed anything, but also so you can hear, you can listen to me say it and think about how the punctuation we've added lines up with what I'm saying. Okay, 3, 2, 1, off we go. Good punctuation is easier than it might seem. Indeed, it's something that anybody can master. It's possible to learn accurate punctuation by absorbing various rules, and it will probably help if at some point you study these formally. However, practical punctuation is about clearly communicating the structure and rhythm of a sentence. For this reason, it should always reflect your writing's natural flow. To begin with, you need to get used to performing your sentences dramatically, as though for a live audience, and listening to the natural pauses. Once you are used to this, you should be able to hear the performance in your head, rather than declaiming to the room. Spotting where to put punctuation is often not too difficult. The harder thing is learning which marks to use in which situations. This can be frustrating, and you may wonder whether you'll ever crack it, however hard you try. However, it will come with practice. One last thought. Don't fall into the trap of overcomplicating your punctuation marks. How many times have I used a semicolon or colon in this passage? Well, we know the answer to that. Once. There is one colon that we've just discussed, and it's here. Okay, fabulous. I know that was quite long and difficult to follow, but I think this should be really useful. Strawberry Cloud's asking if I'm American. Do I sound American? I could be American and not sound American. I believe our dear Prime Minister has possibly American citizenship. Certainly he was born there as well. No, I don't think. Anyway, yes, I could sound English and be American. No, I said he could have American citizenship if he'd wanted to. I think that's it. And he sounds very, very, very British. And so do I. I'm not American. So I've been doing the question and answer in the style of Boris Johnson. How long can I keep this up? Right, it's time for your questions. So I'm really, really terrible at doing accents. What are the main differences between CEM and GL? Well, it depends on which exam you're taking, and it's really easy to Google this and just get a list of the main differences that are often the case. So I won't worry too much. One of the big differences is that CEM often contains close exercises where you get a passage of text with some letters missing from some words, and you have to fill in the missing letters. That's quite a CEM style of question. Doesn't tend to come up in GL exams. So that's one difference. There's a different GL exams sometimes contain a little bit more writing stuff down. But it also depends on which variety of GL or CEM different schools or different school regions choose. I should point out that these are exam styles used generally by grammar schools, not normally by independents, although they do sometimes provide some computer tests that some independent schools use as well. So anyway, boring snoring. You can look for. What does RSL actually stand for? Tell the truth, please. Would I lie to you? Is it your middle name, or is it to make the title sound better? Or is it something else? Well, actually, it's something else because it's a reminder to look out for words ending in S in your writing and look at and check whether they're possessives and whether you need to put an apostrophe. So that's what the S in RSL actually means. Would I lie to you? Sir Robert Stupendous Lomax, says Harley. I'm glad somebody is using my correct mode of address. Do you still have the brace on? Oh, I thought it was going to be an 11 plus question here. No, I took my brace off about four or 5 days ago. Look, party. I still can't run or climb or ski or anything like that, but I no longer have a brace on. So that's something. I can move around without causing myself excessive pain. Celebrations. Right. What other stuff? I'm sorry, I won't get to all the questions here. I don't want the lesson to get too long. I'm just going to answer a few and then let you go forth and prosper. What is the importance of a semicolon? I'm going to save that for another lesson because I feel that I've dealt with enough. Only really explain a semicolon by going back to my writing space and doing some examples and explaining them. So not today, but noted, you want to learn that about the semicolon, we will cover it at some point. Okay, so have no fear. Is King Edward's Grammar School a good grammar school? It depends which one, to be honest. There are a few of them around, but if you mean Birmingham, then yeah, absolutely. I believe it's a good grammar school. King Edward's School. I'm in a tangle. I'm too tired. I've explained too much punctuation. I can't even think. Which King Edwards are you talking about? There are a few of them around, aren't there? I don't know. I'm sure it's fantastic. Sorry. Shout out, please, Raven. Raven, I will not give you a shout out, Raven, on this channel, because if Raven, I gave you a shout out, then everybody would ask for one. So sorry, Raven, I will not be mentioning your name here. Will 11 Plus have these questions, asked somebody. No, this is a way of teaching you grammar so that you get your grammar right in 11 Plus. Sometimes, actually, someone asked about GL and CEM. Sometimes the GL tests do have some grammar questions. Some grammar questions. That's not an accent from anywhere. But not quite like this. No, here's a passage, punctuate it all. Independent school could set it somewhere. I have seen something like that, I guess, a little bit once or twice. But no, not really. It's an exercise I've come up with to teach you some grammar, some punctuation, so that you will go forth and punctuate beautifully in your written work, particularly your creative and descriptive writing, but also your comprehensions and in everything you write forever in your life. The rules I've taught you today, you should still be using those rules when you're 80. I hope, if I've taught you them well. Definitely go back and make sure you've understood everything from today. It is so important. Right, a couple more questions. How are you meant to remember all of your lessons? Well, you can, if you mean my lessons, then they stay on YouTube. You can watch them as many times as you want, and that is how you will remember them, I hope. Go back through things you don't quite understand. You don't need to rewatch the whole lesson. Go back to the bits you don't fully understand or remember and rewatch them. Do the worksheet again, or do that bit of the worksheet until you're really on top of it. How to have a better vocabulary. I've dealt with that lots of times recently in other videos, so I'm going to skip that one for now, but I'm sure I'll come back to it again. But go back to my question and answer sessions. If you go to that part of the channel homepage, see some Q&As. The Q&A where I'm on the cover with a yellow shirt. And I think, am I running? No, I'm doing something. I've got a yellow shirt on, I think. I think the first thing I answered there was about vocab. One of the first things. Have a look there. Would it be? People ask me if X or Y is a good school. I'm not that interested in that. I don't know all these schools so well. And also what's a good school for one person is different from what's a good school for another person. So I don't think they're very useful questions for me to answer. When is merch coming out? When I've designed, same answer as the last few weeks. When I've designed it, I've been too busy with other stuff. Just moved house. Give me a break. It's been Christmas. Let me settle in, take a breath. Thank you for your lesson, Robert Stupendous Lomax, aka RSL. Although we've already discussed what the S really means. Have you done circumference and diameter? And if not, can you? The thing about circumference and diameter is that really, it's not really an 11 plus topic because, you need to know circumference is the outside and diameter is the distance across a circle. But how to actually work them out, that involves using, it involves using formulas or formulae involving pi, which is most definitely not an 11 plus topic. So I may mention them at some point in the video, but I doubt I'll be doing a dedicated video on circumference and diameter. I've learned all the country flags of the world. Do you know any competitions linked to this? Well done. Fantastic. And no, I don't. It's really useful thing to learn, but how useful it will be. Sometimes it's nice just to know things for the sake of knowing them. Thank you for the lesson. Thank you for being here. If you're rewatching this, then now would be a really good time to click on the video, which will magically pop up here, but not if you're watching live, because that's a really useful, relevant video to develop the ideas, some of the ideas that we've been talking about today. It's been wonderful to have you here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for all the comments if you've been watching live. Have a look at the RSL Educational website where there are loads of useful things, and I hope to see you next Tuesday for my next Easy 11 Plus live lesson. In the meantime, I'll be releasing a new short video on Saturday morning. Bye bye.